Some investors are like, I want to see my return in 12 months. And if there's no progress or line of sight to return, then we're done.
When you have mission alignment, you don't get the pressure to take your product and morph it into something that it maybe shouldn't be just to go get early sales or get the easy sales, because they understand deeply the problem and they value the solution.
We're going for this, and nothing is going to change this effort.
It's easy for me to see all of my faults looking back. The most influential people in your life are the ones that challenge you. Because if you're challenged, you're learning and you're growing.
Most founders build for the biggest market, but Carolyn Westcott, she built for the one everyone ignored. She saw a broken system, understaffed kitchens, razor-thin budgets, and a forgotten society that eats like they're prisoners. So she didn't chase what already existed. She built Plated Foodservice to solve a problem no one was chasing, to nourish the least of these. In part 2 of our conversation, we get into niche market strategy, finding the right partner, building with constraints, and what it actually takes to launch something real when the odds are completely against you. If you haven't watched part 1, hit the link below so you can get to know Carolyn before you see what she's truly capable of. Let's get into it.
So Plated Foodservice. This is a fairly new startup, but one that you've been working on, and there's some exciting times ahead. I know you're getting into like a general release. Walk me through what Plated Foodservice is in a way that our viewers can clearly understand.
Sure. So like the most simplest thing that we do, aptly named, we put food on plates. So we feed people. The unique part of what we do is that we're trying to solve the problem of how do you ensure you can feed people when you don't have a proper kitchen, you don't have the staff. If you do have the proper kitchen, you can't staff it, or your budget is so tight that appropriately staffing and engaging with your team and buying quality ingredients is just not doable. So we have a fairly niche market that we operate in, but that was very intentional. I went out seeking to solve a problem that we knew existed in the market and built for that. I didn't need to build another quick serve restaurant. I didn't need to build another kitchen tool. What I really set out to do was redefine how kitchens in these niche spaces could operate.
Yeah. You mentioned in the other episode that there was this problem that clearly existed and no one was trying to solve it. And I think it's really intuitive of you, and it goes back to where you talked about wanting to go deep instead of broad. And that, some founders try to solve problems that other founders are trying to solve. And I think it's really cool that you've really niched down in a market that you can truly serve, you can truly solve this problem and provide a unique outcome. What is that niched market that you all serve?
Yeah, this gets a little boring, so you have to bear with me.
No, this is great.
It's fascinating to me, but most people that I talk to about this kind of glaze over, but this is like deep dive moment, right? So the problem that we identified, the company I was working for runs kitchens in healthcare segments, right? They do a really good job at running kitchens and food programs, because it's really a food program, in the long-term care segment of the healthcare space. So what is long-term care? That's you need skilled nursing assistants, you need help with your activities of daily living and to keep yourself safe and sound. So your residence is now in a skilled nursing facility. So that's long-term care. So this company operates the dining program in these long-term care centers, but does it really, really well in the upper market. So these are communities that are able to put money into their dining programs. They want to invest in chef-driven programs, scratch cooking whenever possible, and they want to have a program that they can not only advertise to the market, right, because they need to get people in the door, but that their residents really enjoy, feel connected to, and it's their residents. So they're kind of honoring the people that live there by doing these really good dining programs, because that helps keep them happy, helps support their dignity. And when people are happier, they live longer, right? Like the whole thing is better.
And for most people, food is partially entertainment.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you're gathering around the table, when you're enjoying the food that you're eating, quality of life tends to be a little bit better and
Yes.
than those that they're dreading the meal they're about to eat. It's not nutritional. They don't leave nourished and better than they
Yeah.
came.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yep.
So this company that I was working for did a great job in the environments where there was the funds to do it and there were the people to do it.
Okay.
So to have a good operation, we kind of look at it as a triangle. You need the systems and processes, you need the funds, and you need the people. You have those three things. You can support all of those three. You've got a quality program. People are going to enjoy it. Your staff are going to have good retention rates. Like they're going to be happy to come to work because
Yep.
they feel good about what they're doing, right? So it all works and it's beautiful and it's happy. That's not a problem. That's not where we're solving, right? What we are trying to do is look at the company portfolio and the leadership, the owner of the company and the senior leaders had said, we would really like to diversify the portfolio into broader market. So we're doing really well in this mid to upper space. How do we go and help the communities have better dining programs that are in the more value-based care space? How do we bring high quality programming to the space that typically has pretty mediocre, if not really just paltry food service programs?
Yeah.
And so we're starting to look at, well, what are the unique challenges of those operations? What in our kind of like triangle do they not have? And oftentimes they're really resource restrained when it comes to money because they are largely funded by Medicaid and Medicare. And so at the higher value properties, people are doing more private pay contribution and they might be part of a larger campus.
Like a
there's
resort
different
long-term care versus
Yeah.
a government-backed long-term
Yeah.
care. Yeah.
We used to say that we knew the community was right for us when we walk in and it feels like a country club. That was the vibe the company was really good at supporting.
Yeah.
That the people here are here by choice and they're here because it helps them support a longer, happier life. The more you move into the value-based care setting, the more it becomes kind of a requirement that they're there and feels less like a choice, which
Yeah.
is awful, right? Like we want to solve that problem. How do we make
Yeah.
sure that even in the value-based care space, it's a choice that they're here and they're happy to be here.
And that there's certain dignity to support it.
Yeah.
Like I know my grandmother was in, one of those Medicare backed facilities, and it was honestly during the COVID time. And, if we weren't there to help make sure that she was getting the care that she needed, she was getting neglected in certain ways, which ultimately led to her passing. During
I'm
COVID,
sorry.
she got bit by a spider. It turned in and got infected.
no.
She had to get her leg amputated, and then that led to her eventually passing away. And so I think it's amazing what you all are doing to try to find ways to improve the dignity of the individuals that are in these facilities by providing them great nutrition, great food programs, and making sure that they're well served. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, I'm so sorry your family had that experience. That's
I think a
awful.
lot of families have that
do.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, their loved ones that have cared for them. One, it's this turmoil that you feel when a loved one has to get to a place where they have to enter those facilities. And so to have organizations like Plated Foodservice come alongside these families and try to bring better amenities and better quality of life for these individuals is an amazing problem that you all are trying to solve. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just hit on a lot of families have these. When we started to look at should we get into value-based care, first you have to validate, like, is there a market there, right? Like what's the size and kind of potential in that market? It's a huge market and it's only going to get bigger because we have a generation that's moving into their era of needing this type of care. And most of them, I can't remember the exact stat on it, but it's a scary number of them don't have the funds to pay for their own long-term care, which means they're going to rely really heavily on Medicare and Medicaid funding to pay for that. And so that when we looked at the data of that, we're like, oh, there's a really massive market opportunity here. So we were starting to like sort out what's the potential, kind of what's the like typified patterns in that part of the market, and then COVID hit. And so we had some like background information, and then we all got really distracted with COVID because now we're just talking about survival. Now we need to just survive in this space. How do we make sure that people are fed, that the staff are safe, right? That we can maintain the operation during absolute chaos of a pandemic.
Yeah.
And we did a good job as a company surviving that. What it really showed, though, was what will the market look like in 20 years?
Mm.
And I don't mean so much the healthcare market, but the labor market.
Yeah.
And the way it did that was it amplified staffing shortages. So all of a sudden, staff were either out because they were acutely ill or because they no longer wanted to work in a space
Yeah.
that was like locked down, and it felt very scary at times to be in a nursing home when they were on outbreak procedures, right? And the pay is not awesome.
Right.
So how do you attract people into that environment? Our HR department was really focused on that. What I was seeing, though, was if I look at the census numbers and where the census trend is going as the boomers are aging into this care, Census Bureau calls it the gray tsunami, not my term, but that's what they call it.
No.
There's a huge wave of them coming. And at the same time, the number of available individuals to work compared to the number of people needing care is going to get smaller. So we have fewer people to work and more people that need care. And if we looked at the available labor during COVID, it was really similar to that in that ratio.
Yeah. So something I want to point out there, that one of the things that I've seen and I've even heard over the years is that great founders are able to kind of spot the wave, right? You know, if you think about someone who surfs, when they become a great surfer, they can spot the wave that they want to ride. And it sounds to me like you were looking through the data, you were already in the field, you started seeing correlations happening. COVID maybe even exposed it early, but you started to see the wave start to brew. And you were working to position yourself in a way that you could catch that wave, not only just for your own investors' benefit, not only for your benefit, but mainly so that people could continue to be served well when that tsunami struck. And I think that's just a really cool thing. So kudos to you in doing that. So when you saw that wave coming and the wave started to brew, what was the solution to it? What was the surfboard that you were going to ride?
Yeah, so at that point, when we acknowledged the opportunity and then we acknowledged the future opportunity, that wave, and that's a great way to say it, because you do have to be willing to say, I can't see this right now, but I know through my gut or through data or something that it's coming. And that could be 10, 20 years out, but it takes a while to build solutions and penetrate market and right. So
and you've got to be committed to it.
You have to really commit to a long time.
We're going for this and nothing is going to change this effort.
Yeah. And people will probably call us crazy because they don't see it yet.
Yeah.
And they're not going to see it until it's in front of them. And then it'll make sense. But for the first few years, people are going to say, like, this is a little bit out there.
Absolutely.
Right?
Like, let's think about this for just a second, because, you know, Elon Musk is a great topic to talk about. You know, when he started a space program early on, it's like, okay, what's the real point of this? And now you start to see all of these things come together, you know, data centers and outer Earth orbit, rockets being reusable for faster travel. There's just so many things that, you know, he took some bets on early on that people thought he was crazy for. Starlink even, right? And, you know, not that there's a one-to-one correlation to what you're doing there, but it's very similar, right? You see this wave coming, you see a lack of solutions for people in these long-term care facilities. You see labor markets changing and adjusting, even more so now with AI. I mean, the job market is going to be hit pretty substantially, and you guys have well positioned yourself to be able to ride that wave for not only the people you serve, but also for the people that you're working with on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is that product that Plated Services provides?
Yeah. So in that, like, what we saw that coming, then we said, okay, well, what's the solution to it, right? Like, what do we actually have to solve to make sure that if there's fewer people and if the inflation continues and budgets get even more strapped and are tighter, then how do we design a solution for the food service program that actually solves those problems, not just like band-aiding over it, right? And so what we figured out was, okay, first we have to significantly reduce the labor requirement. If we can significantly reduce reliance on labor, then we've solved a massive issue.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to reduce labor in a kitchen environment, the typical answer is go to pre-made food. And so go to convenience food, trays of bulk prepared product, and then you just have people portion it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's already available in the market. But it doesn't actually, when you look at the labor study of that, it doesn't really significantly reduce labor. And oftentimes what it does is actually complicate things because, well, now what about like individualized needs of these residents?
Mm-hmm.
You can't meet those with all this bulk food. You still have to have these like one-off things that you can answer for. What about things like texture modification for people who have dysphagia?
Mm-hmm. It just turns into a, for lack of a better term, in my ignorance in the space, like a prison food service, where not what you guys are doing, but like it's like we have one thing for everyone, regardless of their needs.
Yeah, which really doesn't work in this space, and
No,
the
not at all.
regulations prevent that
Mm-hmm.
from being like the default kind of process.
Yep.
So we said, okay, we have to bring convenience food in, but we have to do it in a way that still enables individual choice, meets individual needs, and doesn't sacrifice dignity,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't require people to touch the food, because it's those touches to the food, to portion it, to modify it, to change out the sides on something, that stacks on the labor, amplifies the amount of labor required.
And the training.
And you've introduced a ton of risk anytime somebody has to make an individual decision or modify something that's already come in. So we said, okay, we have to do convenience food, but we need to do it in a different way. And so that's where our actual like food product was developed, because my vision was we could take convenience foods that are pretty like normal now in the consumer world. So you walk down the freezer aisle and you've got, probably 3 to 4 dozen options for prepared frozen meals in a small grocery store.
Yeah.
So we have good food that's individually portioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not in this environment. So how do we bring it into that environment? So we figured that out. And then we said, okay, well, now we've got all these individual plates and we don't have to cook the food on site. We're meeting individual needs. And we designed a plate to make sure we met for dignity. But now we have to heat the food. And you cannot, average nursing home size is about 100 beds in the US. You cannot microwave 100 of these meals at a time. That is totally impractical.
Yeah.
So we had to look and figure out, okay, how do we simultaneously heat these meals, but not have a ton of labor requirement in there, and have a machine that basically anybody can walk up to and operate.
Yep.
And so the technology to heat the food is out there, but we had to put it into a system and package it in a way that made sense for our solution. So then we went and built hardware.
Amazing.
So now we've designed a food product, we've built hardware, and then we said, okay, the next piece to this. So we've solved for the labor issue. We have quality food. Now we need systems and operations. And in that quality food, we've solved for a lot of the budget issues, right? So we've got stabilized budgets, controlled costs, we've solved the labor issue. If we don't inform an operation on how to best operate, we don't have those systems, this whole thing falls apart. So we said, okay, software. Software can be the answer to bring the intelligence of a really savvy food service director into our system so that anybody who walks up to it, anybody who's going to operate it, has that intelligence at their fingertips.
That's amazing.
And so we put it all together, and now it just looks like a slightly different triangle, right? Now you've got quality prepared food, you've got autonomous heating, so you've really reduced your active food prep time, and you've got a software system that ensures the whole thing operates seamlessly.
That's amazing. I think what I love most about what you're describing that you all accomplished was that such a clear thread through your history and how all of that stuff has come together to prepare you for such a time as this. And so when you think through, okay, you had this idea, you've now solved it, and you're now in the implementation phase of it. What did you learn when you were raising funds, when you were finding a partner, when you were building the team? Talk to me a little bit about how, if you were to encourage another founder on this journey, like what are some of the things that you learned through that process on building the right people, the right team, getting the right systems and processes together to actually make this a success?
Yeah, I was really, goes back to some luck, right? Or just good positioning. really lucky that the other founder saw the vision, was also obsessed with the problem, and knew the problem existed, but didn't see the solution until, I don't think it was so much me, but until all these parts and pieces kind of exposed themselves, right? So we had really strong alignment in both the problem we're solving and the solution. And I think that's, if you're not working together when you find the product, even before you build it, right? If you're not working together, then you're probably going to struggle to find alignment if you've just come together to build a product, but you're both coming at it from different angles. It's much harder to find that like center alignment, that you're moving the product in the same direction. So I got really lucky that the other founder, who has had to step away from the business but is still involved in helping me brainstorm and troubleshoot, and more on the like big business pieces, not so much on the product pieces now, but he's not in our day-to-day anymore. I got really lucky that he was not only like along for the ride, but had the same vision, had the same understanding of the solution, had the same deep market understanding, and actually probably understands more of the market than I do. So
that's great.
Wherever I have a gap, he has knowledge to fill that in. We're able to bounce these ideas back and forth on each other. So I think that's really rare. And then on the investor side,
well, actually, I want to dive in real quick to the partner side, because I think that's a really important piece for early founders that I work with, is how to spot a great partner, or if you can do it without a partner, right? I mean, there's a lot of decisions when you're, early on in your journey that can help you in the future outcome on how you're thinking through what partnership actually looks like.
Yeah.
A couple things that, come to mind for me with that, and you hit on it a little bit, is that the earliest time to get along as a partner is in the very beginning. For people to think that that's the hardest part of your partnership journey is whenever you're forming the idea and you're forming,
That's the easy part.
paperwork. It's the easy part,
That's
right?
the easy part, yeah.
And so I think, there's things that can really help inform you whether or not you're a good partner or someone else is going to be a great partner for you.
Yeah.
Is how do you navigate those early conflict pieces? Because it's not that you want a partner where there's zero conflict. In fact, if there's zero conflict, that's probably not a great sign.
Yeah.
But you want conflict, but you want it to be handled in a professional, respectful manner, so that you can get a view in what it looks like to get through those conflict resolution pieces later on when the stakes are higher. So was there any early signs that showed like, this is a great partner?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm all in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Rich, the founding partner that I have, is, I don't know, probably 30 years. He's a second generation food service operator.
Okay.
And a through and through entrepreneur.
Okay.
And he has, I think, always been an entrepreneur, even from like his early years.
Yeah.
He just dove right in, but entrepreneurship was modeled for him in his family. And so when I look at him, not only as a leader, but as an entrepreneur, he has the kind of the entrepreneur confidence of like, I've done this, right? We can do this, which if you're a first time entrepreneur and you're doing something at this scale, that's really intimidating.
Yeah. So
to have somebody who has been through it, has survived, has like taken the hits of entrepreneurship, and early on I knew that that's a really valuable level of like wisdom. It's not really, you could call it maybe a skill, but I think it's really just wisdom. He has like taken the hits of life, that he knows how hard this is going to be, and he's going to know how to kind of weather the storm of this. So that's a rare thing to find, right? I think it's also really rare to find somebody who's been in an industry that long that's still willing to innovate. Yeah. Because oftentimes you find people that have been successful, and he has been really successful in an industry. They're not super interested in innovation, right? They're like, what I'm doing is working. It's making me money. I have clients, right? Like, why go flip the table on this? But he's kind of just crazy enough to be willing to do that. So he's a bit like me in that sense. So I also saw in how he operated his business that I was working for, that I think really spoke to me. I don't have a great way to term it. Probably some sociologists or like, psychologists could better identify this, but to me, it's like strong opinions loosely held.
Yeah.
Where he feels really passionately about things,
Yep.
but that if there's a strong argument that's counter to what his passion is or what his gut is saying or what he sees as
He
the
welcomes
direction,
it.
he will do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
wants to be challenged, and he thrives challenge.
One of the ways that I describe that to our team, because I feel very passionate about that as well, I give the analogy of like when you're holding on to a rope, you don't want to hold it so loose that you just fall.
Yeah.
But you definitely want to have a loose enough grip that you can move and it will burn your hand, but you're not going to fall.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're describing where, he's very passionate. He has a great gut, but he's also aware that sometimes his gut may not be right. And he wants to hear outside perspectives and come to a conclusion through friction.
Yeah.
Not through friction in an unhealthy way, but through great dialogue, great respect, humility, and gentleness to find the right resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. That really well captures kind of the like rich, I don't want to say personality, but because I think that's who he is at work.
Yeah.
Right.
The presence and
the
how
presence.
he leads. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
His
awesome.
leadership style. And so it was a big hit when he had to step away from the day-to-day of the business, because it was like, oh, I've kind of lost like my partner here, and to help balance and to watch how he operates in the day-to-day and learn from him. So that left a big gap, but you find ways to survive.
Yeah.
And so you just have to keep evolving with it.
For sure. That's great. So, we talked about how to choose a great partner, and I'm really just curious on, because it looks different for everyone who's raising money, but what were you looking for when you were finding the right investor for Plated Foodservice?
Yeah. Got really, I keep saying luck, but this one, I think, comes down to timing and a bit of luck, but also our willingness to acknowledge the kind of gift that we had in front of us. So our investor, OHI, I really put them in the category of a mission-aligned investor. And when you have mission alignment, you don't get the pressure to to take your product and morph it into something that it maybe shouldn't be, just to go get early sales or get the easy sales, right? You don't have that pressure to produce revenue.
Yeah.
Because they understand deeply the problem and they value the solution. And so it would have been probably fairly easy for us to go out and shop for a different funding structure or for more money up front or for like less equity, to figure out, is there a better, more advantageous way for us to get funded? We really, though, chose to stay focused on OHI as our investor because of the alignment to the mission. And not only did they understand and value the product and understood the potential of it, but they were really uniquely positioned to have deep understanding of the market.
Yeah.
And investing is not what they do day in and day out. They're a healthcare REIT. So they invest as kind of an accessory, and they make investments in businesses that they believe are going to meaningfully impact the kind of space that they operate in the healthcare space. And so not only did they understand the product, but they really, in a very unique way, understood the potential impact of the product, not just the sales impact, but the impact to the operators, the impact to the residents. And so when you have somebody who sees your product beyond just the sales number and beyond the terminal value target and everything, and their return potential, but really understands deeply the impact you're going to make with your product, I think you get so much more grace. And it would be really easy for them as an investor to call me out on 100 different things that I did wrong and could have done better or could have been faster with. But I think when you have somebody who's really mission aligned and is invested in not only the product, but also the founding team and sees the potential beyond the dollar signs, they're much more willing to give that grace and understanding of the natural path of a founder, of a product, of what it takes to develop a product. If we had gone out and found a PE or a VC firm, it would have been a very different story. And I have no idea if I would be here today because they probably would have had 1,000 opinions on how to build hardware and how to build software, right? How to do all the things we've done so far.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we would have stayed aligned. Maybe not, who knows? But the gift of having an investor who is mission aligned, deeply understands the market, believes in the solution, that was like too good to pass up.
Yeah.
And early on, I went to a startup conference and was kind of learning about funding structures and how do you raise money and like what are all the different, technical like vehicles you can put it in and how do you structure these things and all
Mhm.
because I have to know, right? Like
Yeah.
I have to deeply understand
sure.
how these things are done because I don't feel like I definitely don't have the training and the
Right.
education
And
to
a lot of
know.
founders that jump into it, they don't know.
Right.
And so there's a lot of gotchas in there that, you only learn sometimes by signing the wrong document.
Yes.
But what
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say with this investor is that one of the things that I don't think a lot of people understand is that when an investor has a longer time horizon than some investors, they have a much shorter time horizon. And it sounds like you found a great investor that their time horizon for the return was much longer,
Mhm.
which gives you less pressure on the short term to shortcut
Yeah.
getting to actually solve a problem for the mission that you all are aligned on.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that is an invaluable piece to the puzzle that I think a lot of founders need to realize. What is the expected timeline for the return that this investor is investing for? Some investors are like, I want to see my return in 12 months. I'm going to give you 12 months, and if there's no
Yeah.
progress or line of sight to return, then we're done. I think that unless you're desperate, that is an investor you want to avoid.
Yeah.
Or avoid. But if you've got an investor that has a longer time horizon, that's just a recipe for a great outcome long term.
Yeah. And that has the ability to continue to back you.
Yep.
Because probably the money you raise the first round
Mm-hmm.
is not going to be the right amount for what you need to
For
accomplish.
sure.
Because there's so many blind spots when you're just starting out that it's really difficult to pinpoint that number.
Yep.
And so having an investor who is not only able, it's really usually not about willing, it's about able to give you that long timeline for return, but is also willing to say, look, I know you need this money for this, what you can see, but when you come around and know you need more, talk to me first.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll figure out how to do it.
Yep.
Whether it's with us or we'll support you in finding the next
Bring in
right
more
vehicle.
investors. Yeah.
Right. Who
Mhm.
aren't saying, oh, if you need more, we'll flip it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then I'm going to get out too because this is, they don't hold you so firm.
Yeah.
And not having that rigidity gives you a lot of opportunity.
Yep.
One of the also really, really valuable things that I learned at this conference that I went to early on was a serial entrepreneur talking about the gift of not worrying about fundraising.
Hmm.
And that if you are able to position yourself and your company in a way where you're not having to raise every 6 months,
Yep.
what are you able to accomplish as a founding team
Mm-hmm.
that if you went after the most advantageous deal, but got a smaller amount of money for it, and you'd have to be back out funding again, raising again to get more funds in the next 6 months or 8
Mhm.
months, whatever. What is that costing you?
Yeah.
And so is the deal the best possible deal? I mean, I think it's a really good
Sure.
agreement that we have, and I feel really good about it. But I've talked to plenty of people who have said, oh, I bet you could have gotten more for giving up less and you
Mhm.
should have done it this way and that way. I'm like, yeah, but I probably would have had to take the money in much smaller increments,
Yeah.
had to constantly be out raising, like with
Mhm.
every milestone, versus having a longer pre-negotiated agreement that
Yeah.
says when I achieve milestones, we release more
Yep.
and you continue to fund it.
For sure.
So I've
Well,
been very
and there's
gifted.
also this element too and it even exists with employees, right?
Mm.
The more salary they make, the more pressure that's put on them to perform.
Yeah.
And I think if you get the wrong investor where, they're giving you an overvaluation, then there's more pressure on you to provide an outcome that is outsized of what's potentially capable on the short term.
Yeah.
And so I think having that great investor who's going to be a great partner, have clear milestones, there's a lot of intangibles in that I think you probably did a great job on. The next start that you had was, okay, you've got the partner. right? Now we've got some idea of the plan. Obviously, plans shift,
Yep.
as you know now, starting a business. Um, how did you architect the team and the leadership team around you to actually pull this off?
Yeah. So with our product's a little strange probably to like most founder stories or like most tech startups,
Mm-hmm.
especially probably now even more so with like the AI age,
Yeah.
uh, in that we had a really long product development phase.
Mm-hmm.
We had to build hardware, we had to develop food packaging and then get the food into the package,
Yeah.
and do it at what we knew would be a scale to support
Yeah.
the scale that we want.
It wasn't just create like a software as a service platform and launch.
Yeah.
It was hardware. I mean, most hardware organizations, it takes a lot of time. There's
Yeah.
lots of specs, there's lots of intellectual property, there's protection that you've got to go through. So totally understand that.
Yeah. So we had this really long product development phase. And in that phase, uh, I was for a long time, I was like an operation of one. And so it was myself and my founding partner at the time, but he was already starting to step back a little bit. And to build the early software, to develop the food, to build the hardware, instead of hiring on individuals, I looked out and found firms that were really skilled in those arts and relied on them. And what that enabled me to do was to kind of have a broader team with broader skill set because people were able to come in and out of the project when like the product needed them,
Yeah.
right? And so for a long time, it was easy. It would be easy to say it was just me, but I really saw the teams that I was working with at these outside firms as like part of my team.
Yeah.
They were really extensions. And I got really lucky in that, well, I shouldn't say lucky. I worked hard to find the right partners.
Yep.
We had long interview processes. I tried to do the like test it before we fully get invested to make sure that's right. And we had some early partners who we had to walk away from, which is really hard because you've invested time and money.
Yeah.
And now you feel like you have to restart the product development process or take a big hit on your timeline. And so we were like, I don't want to say incredulous. We were unwilling to compromise
Yeah.
in making sure that the product was built correctly.
Yep.
So if we were working with a group where we felt like they're not understanding the need or they're injecting too much of their own product vision and opinion that doesn't align with our vision, we had to be really intentional. And I say we because I didn't make those decisions alone. They're very much with the founding partner to say, is the writing on the wall enough for us to say,
Yeah,
let's
you got to make
shift.
a decisive decision there.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about that, because some people are like, let's hire our own team. Let's invest a lot of money in benefits, tech infrastructure. Let's hire people that, we're going to have to pay a long-term salary to, maybe even severance packages if these things don't work out, profit sharing, equity. Or you've got the other side where it's like, hey, let's work with a partner that has done these things before. And the funny thing is that the risk exists in both scenarios.
Absolutely.
Whether you have to find a new vendor or find a new employee to replace an existing, those risks are about the same.
Yep.
And so I think, there's a lot that goes into that evaluation. It sounds like you did the evaluation and you found one that worked out for you. Were there any regrets going in that direction? Or do you think if you had to start again, you would go in that same direction where you would use an outside partner?
I would categorize them as regrets. They're learnings, right? Because I feel like it would be a regret if I knew it was the wrong thing to do and I still did it.
Yeah.
Right. Then it's like, I put that in the regret bucket. I don't feel like I've made any of those along the way. But it's really been more a constant question, which I'll probably never answer, is would it have been faster? Would it have been better? Would I have gotten farther for less? Right. And it's so easy to like romanticize the other side of the option, right? Of the like equation or the option, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to say, oh, that group over there did it the opposite way that I did, and look how easy they have it. Well, they probably don't. They probably had the same challenges. They dealt with the same risks, right? And it is it's a different challenge to get a lot of independent groups, independent vendors all working together. that was a really big challenge. I don't think I was always awesome at it, but you learn from it, right? And so like, are there things I would do differently now if I hit the reset button? Absolutely.
Sure.
Would I go completely opposite? Probably not. I
Yeah.
would probably do more of like a combination of
Mhm.
the approach and bring people on earlier into the team so that we had more like
Like strong technical leadership
yeah,
in-house that is leveraging an outside partner.
yeah,
Yeah, so that you're not having to be the one guiding all those decisions and being the
yeah,
liaison between vendors. That makes total sense. I even think, for me as I'm building Midwestern, like what does it look like for our long-term strategy, especially in the age of AI? We use contractors. We have a contractor pool that is very large. We also have an in-house team that is very specialized. But I think as we are moving towards, what does it look like to use agentic workflows? What does it look like to supercharge our best engineers and our best designers? Really, it comes down to that phrase that I just used, our best engineers and our best designers, in a way that, as the market is shifting, you can do so much more with high performers with AI than AI can do with low performers.
yeah,
And I think as we're shifting our long-term staffing strategy, it's more like, okay, we want to bring, the best of the best in-house for our W-2, and we want to leverage a global talent strategy to help augment our internal team in a way that brings the best benefit of both worlds together so that we can really start to standardize our processes, standardize our development cycles, standardize these things, and leverage the new tooling that's coming out. And so when we bring people in, they're being brought into a process that we control
yeah.
and they're managed by those top tier individuals. And it sounds like that's the thing that, you're even starting to evaluate, bringing in really specialized, highly technical talent on your W-2 team and then leverage outside partners for the supplemental work.
Yep, very much that balance. The other thing I've been like, love to get your opinion on this, that I have been playing around with in my mind. I've been reading up on it and thinking really unique opportunity you have as a founder is you're building the org.
Yeah.
You're building the culture, you're building the structure. And not only do you have the product vision, but you should hopefully have some vision for actually the organization that you're building. And so as we get closer to wrapping up the like kind of V1 product development, getting that out to the world, now I have more time to look at, okay, I'm bringing on people and building these teams.
Yep.
What do I want that culture to be? How do I want the teams to work with each other? And what do I want the org to look like?
Yeah.
And I think it's a combination of a bit of AI being more available now and the tool, it being easier to understand how teams are going to use those tools. But then also just like, what does a modern org look like?
Yeah.
And not doing the like traditional management stacking and ending
sure.
up this like very triangular organization,
Yep.
but instead doing like the flat or kind of lattice organization structure where people are individually responsible for their outcomes, right? But have tools or outside resources to help accelerate their work, but are very responsible for it and held accountable and responsible by the rest of the team,
Yep.
not so much by a strict management
For
structure.
sure.
And it feels like in the like an age of AI, we have more opportunity to build those kind of latticed working systems than we have in the past, whether it's through individuals' acceleration of work or more access to tools that they can use versus just building a team, right? You're now just building agents and utilizing more systems. But I keep thinking about what is the next, like I know what our products will look like.
Yeah.
I have good vision for that, but sorting out what does the organization look like and how do we build it and how do I use modern tools, make sure we're building it in a smart way, right? And like a way that resonates to like what will the future of work look like, and not just adopting like old structure.
Sure.
Right.
I think a lot of that, for me, is I think through what does the next few years look like? Because if we were to look back even 2 years ago, we would never imagine AI would be where it is today.
Yeah.
And so I think with that same thought process, we have to understand what we think AI is going to be capable of in 2 years. AI will be so much further along on that path because we're experiencing that today.
Yeah.
And so when I think through what org structure should look like. I also think there's different seasons of your business.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so to me personally, I would not focus a whole lot on culture. I think culture is important, or org structure, until you start to generate revenue. So I think there is like pre-revenue and then there's post-revenue problems as a founder that
Yeah.
exist. Pre-revenue problem, the only problem is get revenue, right?
Yeah.
And it's not revenue at all costs. It's not burn through
Yeah.
people, but I mean, everyone on the team has to have this understanding that we need to generate revenue. Because when I think about a healthy business, right, you talked about this triangle in food service, but really every business has this healthy triangle of raise revenue, decrease cost, and increase efficiency. If you can accomplish those things at a fundamental business level,
Yeah.
those are the things that are most important. Now, once you have revenue that you can raise, and once you have costs that you can decrease, and once you can focus on efficiency, then you can start to think through, okay, what does the org structure look like to sustain this growth long term? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have large swings on the upside, but you also don't want to have large swings on the downside.
Yeah.
So as a founder that's running, into a post-revenue organization, now you have to start thinking through what is sustainable, scalable growth to where I limit the upside and I limit the downside so that we can plan for a solid median growth, right? Yeah. And so once you get that solid medium growth planning, now you can start to say, okay, what are the pieces of this puzzle that we need to put together so that we can sustain this growth long term and eliminate the variables?
Yeah.
Once you can start to eliminate the variables, then you can start to say, who are the people that I need on this bus? What are the roles that they're going to do? And then how can we make them more efficient by increasing their productivity and increasing what they do with AI? To your point, the great individual contributors to any organization don't need managers. They don't need people that are like looking at their watch, seeing how much time they're spending on things. And, early on with Midwestern, when we made the shift to being a remote hybrid company, there was this conversation about how do we know these people are working? Right?
Because they're outcomes. You're going to see it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the more we as leaders and organizational leaders can focus on, if you don't trust them to work from home, you probably shouldn't trust them to be on your team.
Yeah.
The best performers will work the same whether they're working from home or whether they've got a chair that's being filled in a cubicle or an office space in your brick and mortar location. And the more we can start to create an environment to where high performers attract high performers, and we're giving them the tools and the investments necessary to increase their performance, because high performers want to do what? Perform.
Yeah.
And if you give them the tools to perform more, what are they going to do? Perform more. And so I think you're spot on where the direction of AI tooling, how it's going to create a 10xer is now a 100xer, a 1xer is now going to be a negative xer. Because they're going to use AI slop. They're going to take AI output to mail in their job and not make things better, not be a good steward, not create positive influence, and not be a trustworthy individual on your team. So they're going to use AI to decrease the amount of productive work, but increase the amount of output. Whereas a high performer will increase the amount of performance using these tools to maximize their performance capability. Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
No, absolutely. I love everything in that. And I have to tell you, so we are a really weird startup. We've had this long product development phase where we had revenue really early. And that's because our investor said, go prove that it works. So we had to get out to the market a very minimal like MVP product that we were able to sell, get a client, and keep the client. And if we can't sell it, implement it, and keep it,
shut it down.
Then nope. Figure out what the next solution is. It's not this, right? We're going to cap the investment. So we had pressure early on to prove the concept. We did. And we actually had problems in that we had to stop scaling that because we had capacity constraints with food production and hardware production that like we could only get so much out. And then we had this really big stall period where we had to cap the growth, which like you talk to most startup founders and like, I would never, I would find a way through.
Well, you don't want to ruin those customers, and they all talk to each other, especially in that type of environment.
Yeah.
So.
And we're actually feeding people. So like I can't just overnight increase food capacity. It's a long runway to do these things. And I kind of underestimated the early success we would have with that minimum viable product because I thought people will tolerate this. They won't want this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the market was like, no, we actually want this. And in that, we also found that not only, although we built for the skilled nursing space, we built for this senior long-term care space, there's this huge market gap in a completely different space, behavioral health.
Yeah.
And so we found this little like gem of a market that we weren't even looking for at the time. And so in that, we not only, we didn't shift the product really, but we shifted like the marketing focus and the early rollout focus and stuff, which has all been fine. But we've had the challenges of like how, we've got this revenue. Now I've got to get the team to understand that like we're doing well, but we can't sell anymore.
Yeah.
Which can really quickly demotivate people, right? Like it really just kills the
Momentum.
momentum. And so we've had to kind of survive through that. And now we have the product that is scalable. We don't have capacity constraints anymore, and we can go and sell. And they're like back online, right? Like now we have to go do. But everything you said about building the org resonates, makes perfect sense to me. And it's so interesting how the comment about the low performers think they can hide with AI tools when in fact it actually just exposes that they're not willing to do the work, or they're not dedicated to giving a good product. Because we've definitely experienced that. Early on, we started building out the team early last year, and had a couple of hires that I would say just didn't work out for whatever reason. But I think one of the things that I saw in there was this early reliance on AI tools to just push work out versus really looking at how do I make sure that these are quality contributions and are really moving the company in the right direction. And at the time, it really felt like, okay, I could sit down and put a manager over this person because I don't specialize in that work. So am I really able to, like, in a technical sense, manage them? No, probably not. Do I go find a manager to do that and try and save the person?
You know, Steve Jobs once said that the best managers are the individual contributors that never wanted to be a manager.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's so true, because it's like, if you're just getting a manager to manage people, but they have no context of how to actually accomplish it. The best situation is having a manager that's contributing to the product alongside the individual contributors. Right. And so I think that that's an amazing heuristic to think through, like, as you're building out your team. I think we're going away from the people that just sit behind desks and make sure that people are getting stuff done. You don't need
There's
that
no
anymore.
space for them anymore.
There's no space. There's no space on the budget.
No.
There's no space in really just the organizational cost and overhead that just continues to metastasize, you know, as you hire more and more of those types of people. And there's a clear shift happening in the market. You know, one of the things that you said is that you could spot it. One way that I've noticed that is if, you know, you want someone to do a presentation, or you want someone to do a write-up on something, and it's clear they burned all their 10 days, and on the day before they just put a prompt into ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or whatever, and they ask it to do a report, and you can clearly see it was totally AI. It's almost like, do they not understand that is like clearly obvious that they just threw it into AI and then put it into their own company document and said that they spent a ton of time on it? And one of the ways that I've really spotted this out is by asking questions in those meetings to test if they went deep on the topic to where they clearly understand the problem. Do they clearly understand, you know, what are the different options as far as outcomes? Because for me, it's not always obvious what the solution is to a problem. And you have to go through a few different cycles to understand, well, here's the problem, here's this potential solution, here's this potential solution, here's this potential solution, but this is the best solution that I'm recommending us take. And if they don't have awareness of the, you know, adjacent solutions, then they probably didn't come to the proper solution for the problem.
They just took whatever was first handed to them.
Exactly. Well, that's great. So we kind of got into technology philosophy a little bit. What is the philosophy as far as the rollout plan for Plated Foodservice?
To your point earlier, build revenue, right? Like we have to go get clients. But we're really trying to be intentional with the rollout and making sure that we have clients who we're not overselling to them. They're coming to us and saying, we need a better way. and this solution works for us. I would really much rather have people who opt in, right, than me to have a over like overactive sales team that's convincing the market they need this.
Yeah.
Which, maybe it's not the most correct approach, but I want the product to actually solve problems for people and to improve their food service program. If you came to me and said, we have a kitchen that's well staffed, people love our food, and we're hitting our budget, and our safety inspections are great, I'm like, awesome.
Keep it up.
Keep it up, man. That's killer. Keep doing what you're doing, and kudos to you for figuring it out.
Yeah.
I don't need to sell you my product because my product is not going to solve problems for you.
Right.
But what I will do, if I hear a problem in that conversation, I'll help point you in the right direction to go find the solution to fix whatever it is you're dealing with, right? And so for me, I want to be really intentional with our revenue and making sure that it's the right client, not just revenue for revenue's sake, and also that we're not overselling the solution. You still need some people. You still need somebody to be engaged in this. It is not fully autonomous. It is not an AI super bot that's going to figure out your food service program, right? You still have to be committed to what you're doing. And so it's really about finding those right partners in the early stage. And then when we're able to sell to a broader market, then expanding the product and solving more problems for
you got to
more
create
clients.
that like base foundation.
Yeah.
And I think, as you're saying that, it goes back to some things that, as building some different companies that I've been a part of, there's really two different avenues, right? You've got demand capture and you've got demand generation. And how you generate that demand versus how you capture existing demand really comes down to whether or not these organizations have a problem that needs solved. One. Two, do you adequately understand the problem that's there? And do you have three, the solution to alleviate that problem?
Yeah.
And that's the demand capture, because if your customer has these problems, you know the problem, they know the problem, they don't know the solution, but you have the solution, then you're able to capture that demand and convert it into you all being a solutions provider in it. The other piece of that you're talking about is that demand generation, to where they may have the problem, but they're not aware of it, right? Or they don't have the problem today, but they might in the future.
Yeah.
And so how do you get in front of these potential customers and be there as a brand recognized to be able to solve this problem that exists that they don't know they have, or that they don't have yet, so that when they're aware that they have the problem, they know who to go to alleviate it. And I think that's a really interesting way to categorize what you were talking about, is demand capture and demand generation.
Yeah. And for us on the demand capture side, when we go to trade shows and we have our booth and people see the product, it's really obvious, right? People come up to us and they're like, this solves what I am trying to solve. If this was, I didn't know this was available. Had I known this, I wouldn't have done that I'm currently doing. We're like, cool. You didn't know because it didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Like no harm, no foul, right?
Yep.
But we're here now and we'd love to talk to you.
For sure.
And then on the other side, we get a ton at these trade shows or when we're out at conferences, when I'm just talking to other founders in the space and other companies, I hear all the time, oh, you know what you'd be great at? You should go chase this thing over there because I could see this solving that problem over there. I'm like, I don't deeply understand that problem well enough, and I didn't build for that problem to know with enough confidence that this is the solution for that thing over there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to distract the product and I don't want to distract the team in chasing all of those things right now, but talk to me in a year,
For
right?
sure.
Like I'm going to go learn about that thing and figure out if I can solve their problem and deeply understand their problem, right? Not just like surface level, to know. And in that exploration, I feel like that's where you build trust and you build brand awareness in a much more like meaningful relationship kind of way than just saying I can solve every problem.
And not only externally, but also internally.
Yeah.
Right. There's this famous thing that Jeff Bezos said that, when he was early scaling Amazon, he brought in this very senior level executive that was helping him scale Amazon to that next level. And this executive said, Jeff, you have enough ideas, you could kill Amazon. And I think what great restraint you have in saying that, yeah, these are a lot of ideas, but we're not going to focus on those right now. We're going to get laser focused on the problem that we were uniquely positioned to solve. Once we solve that, now we can create space to dream on what other problems we can solve that are, adjacent to the space that we're serving.
Yeah.
So kudos to you in that. And thank goodness Jeff Bezos didn't kill Amazon, because my wife uses Amazon a lot. So,
So,
yep.
yeah, I think that's one of those pieces of wisdom that my co-founder Rich really brought in,
Yeah.
was to say early on, he told me so many times that early on in his career, he tried to solve every single problem
Yep.
and would take on any sale because he figured I can solve whatever it is they're coming with, like, whatever their issue is. But then later, and really hit the success when he figured out, I'm really good at this thing right here, and I'm going to find people who need that solution, not I'm going to be the solution for everybody.
Totally.
So it definitely takes discipline, though. It is very hard to not see the shiny thing and just be like, oh, let's go,
100%.
But how disruptive, and you end up not moving anywhere, right? You don't make progress forward if you're constantly shifting directions. You really have to commit.
Yeah, and to bring it full circle, that's that creative and pragmatic side. A lot of times the creative side of your brain wants you to focus on, am I motivated to do this today? Am I passionate about this? Like, how does it make me feel? And I've noticed, marrying the logical side with that creative side, then you've got the logical side that says it doesn't matter how I feel. In fact, when I feel certain ways, it can honestly make me make decisions that probably aren't best for me.
Yeah.
And so, like, when you have that balance to where you can be motivated, but it's not the only thing you're relying on, you can always return back to discipline. You can say, hey, I clearly planned this out. I clearly had a pragmatic approach to why we're doing this. I'm going to stick to the plan even when I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Have you had any moments along this journey where you had to really lean into maybe motivation in certain seasons, or say, you know what, I'm not feeling motivated right now, and now I really got to just rely on the clear discipline of the logical side of my brain?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really easy to get distracted, right? If you're a creative type, you've got 1,000 ideas all the time.
Yep.
And I could make any of them a reality if I put enough energy behind them, right? And so it really takes, I often feel like it's temperance. It takes a lot of not only discipline, but being aware of that temperance concept of, I can react to this idea in a big way, but I might derail this thing over here.
Yeah.
So I have to temper my reaction to that excitement. And I can live in the space where I can acknowledge it, but I might not act on it. Or I acknowledge it and give it just enough space that I can kind of get it out, and then I can put it away. And so it's not only that wisdom to know to do that, but then the temperance to actually in practice do it, right?
For sure.
And I kind of had the gift of like that wisdom from the co-founder, and then was doing a lot of my own work on, I absolutely have missed opportunities in life because I have not been willing to be disciplined and practice temperance and staying focused. And so that the discipline combined with being willing to slow down and accept that I'm working on a path to stay on that path, to not jump. It took time to do that. I don't think I could do this when I was 20. I just don't think I hadn't learned enough yet about me and the way that I work and the world. I would have jumped from this, not because it was hard or because I didn't like it, but because there was something else that popped up, another challenge, another thing.
More exciting.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think even for me as a CEO, and I know you as you're leading Plated Foodservice, it's really important for us when we're leading a team of people to be able to understand what the goals are and understand what the priorities should be to meet those goals. As I'm working within, a small business that, was created with me bootstrapped and, other business partners versus working in a publicly traded company. There's different different types of working styles. And one of the things that I've noticed transitioning into working with, a public company and having to produce returns for investors and shareholders and those types of things is that your planning is, yes, you need to have a 12 to 18 month plan and even a 3-year plan high level. But at the end of the day, the quicker you can bring that plan down into quarters and into months, the more laser focused you can be to actually achieve. And I don't think I realized that early on in my career. It's all about annual planning.
Yeah.
And then you set the plan and then you go for it. But the reality is the closer your planning is to your next day, the closer your priorities can be properly aligned to achieve that plan.
Yeah.
And so as we get into quarterly reporting and monthly business reviews, those types of things, it's amazing how whenever you can really prioritize all the things in your mind to how is this going to achieve what I'm needing to achieve within the next 30 days.
Yeah.
And when you can start to do that, then your priorities can start bubbling up to say, these are the top 3 things I've got to focus on as a CEO so that we even have a chance for quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4,
Yep.
and beyond. And I think that's a really interesting learning that I've felt, and it seems like that you've felt it over the course of your career.
Yeah. I would say I'm definitely in one of those evolutions of the goal planning and how you stick to those goals in product development versus when you're in that revenue building stage.
Yeah.
It's very different, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like the company's kind of like crossing this chasm of shifting out of product development mode and really into much heavier revenue building, and we still have to do product development, right?
Yep.
But we're doing that really well right now. So like that's operating and that's solid. Now we've got to figure out how do we build revenue, support our customers as we scale. And even like it would be so easy to just say this is the annual plan, just work towards that. But exactly to your point, I feel like the only way you cross that is to break that up into like, what's the goal for this week? What are you accomplishing this week that's getting us into this moving us out of the transition, right? And getting us to the next step. Because if you like gloss over it, I think you run the risk of kind of undermining the work that it takes to get there. Right?
Yep.
And so you've got to be willing to like break it down.
Yep.
And I think people that are problem solving minds see this really easily, right? It's like very clear in our minds.
Yeah.
I have to step A, step B, step C. This is the path I have to take. That's probably more on the analytical side of that problem solving than the super creatives are like, I see the vision.
Yeah.
Go get the vision, right? And you're like, well, how are you getting there? What are the incremental steps you're taking? And not everybody on the team has the same brain, right? So like that practice of like every Monday we start just with a morning check-in, which is so simple, right? But it's like the question is, what's your bright spot or your distraction so that everyone can acknowledge like, are you going through something that maybe it just has you stepped out a little bit or you had a win somewhere? And then what's your goal for the week? What are you trying to accomplish? And what blockers do you have? So I kind of adopted that from the like morning stand-ups for software teams, right? It's like very like native to people who build software, but people in operations often are so like in the day-to-day that they're like, oh, I got to come up and like report these things out and like share this stuff, right?
I think something that's interesting with Midwestern is that, from the C-suite all the way to individual contributors, software engineers and product designers, we put in our YTBs daily. What'd you do yesterday? What is your focus today? And what blockers are keeping you from getting it done? And, partly that came from me just wanting to make sure that what we're asking of our team, we as an executive team are willing to do ourselves. And I think there's some really great benefit in that. But what I didn't realize was how beneficial it would be for us to be on the same page as a leadership team and an executive team to make sure that our priorities are laser focused on what we're trying to achieve this month, this quarter. And it's been really valuable. One thing that you mentioned that I want to hit on real quick about being disciplined and setting goals is oftentimes, you've heard, let's eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that. But I think, for a lot of founders and leaders that are listening, one thing that shifted in me within the last, 2 years was that I was focused on how much I could chew, right? How big of a bite could I take? And then eventually maybe I would see the elephant that I could potentially consume, right? Versus saying, what is the elephant? And then what is the timeline in which I want to be eating this elephant by? and then working backwards from that. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily you have to have the vision of what your company looks like, but what is the revenue goal you're trying to achieve? Is it 50 million in annual revenue? Great. Now you're not measuring your progress looking backwards to where you are today based on how much you can chew, but you're starting to say, what do I need to put in place to actually achieve that number? And I think those are really important distinction there, to work back from a number or back from a goal versus working from your current state to a goal.
Yeah.
And that has really changed us and our ability to stay disciplined to what actually needs to get done so that we can reach the desired outcome of what we want to achieve and not just rely on motivation every day.
Yeah.
So, Carolyn, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one more question, and I do this to everyone, but if you could look at your parents today, if they were standing right here in the room and you could tell them how much you appreciate it and give them a thank you, what would you say?
I would say as a child, it
Mm-hmm.
was not apparent to
Okay.
me how valuable the lessons they were teaching.
Hmm.
That I often thought they are just being stingy and could make my life easier, but they're choosing not to.
Hmm.
And, I could look out so easily as a kid and see other kids getting the easy path, and was very angsty with my parents a lot in
Mhm.
that they weren't just giving me the easy path,
Yeah.
but how valuable that was. And recognizing and acknowledging for them how much fortitude that took
Mm.
and how much intentionality that took on their part. Because it'd be so much easier to give your child the easy path.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I would be able to do what I'm doing today had that happened.
Hmm.
And so their willingness to put up with my BS as a child and my temper tantrums
Mhm.
and my kind of, rebellious type of pattern and behavior,
Yeah.
in not giving in, holding the line, being disciplined enough, right,
Mhm.
to know to do what they knew was right and would get the outcome that they felt committed to.
Yeah.
Holding that line, thank God they did it.
Mm.
And I would give them a huge hug and big thanks that they did it, because I don't think I'd be who I am today if they were not as disciplined and didn't have the temperance and were, willing to give in to me as a child. It would have been a completely different outcome.
Yeah. That's great. What about those that invested in you over the years and even your business partners today? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would have to say thanks for taking that risk, because it's easy for me to see all of my faults looking back and all of the reasons that I challenged people who were helping me,
Mhm.
right? And so thanks for staying committed, and thanks for being willing to see beyond the now and see my potential and help steer me in that direction, challenge me just enough that I was able to grow from it. I think sometimes I often feel like the most influential people in your life are the ones that challenge you. Because if you're challenged, you're learning and you're growing.
Yeah.
And if nobody ever challenges you, I mean, how easy of a life will you have? But you miss out on so much.
Yeah.
And so when I look back and I think, like, who are the most influential people in my life? They're the people who, in the moment, I probably would have liked the least, because they were challenging me and they were pushing me, holding me accountable in ways that in the moment were probably very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so huge thanks to them for committing to that and being willing to put up with my discomfort, right? And seeing the potential for their impact in my life. And I mean, maybe they didn't at the time too. Like, who knows? Like, I don't think everyone I've come into contact with has been like, I'm going to make her better, right? I'm going to get her to reach her potential. But being willing to challenge me in that moment to not yield to my behavior forced me to learn and to grow.
Yep.
So
I think often the people that tell people the truth in certain scenarios not only are willing to put up with the potential discomfort of those that they're telling the truth to, but also just the discomfort of having to tell someone the truth.
Yeah.
And what an amazing thing it is when we as leaders, one, hear the truth and make a change so that we can become better for the future version of ourselves, but also are willing to tell the truth to others to do the same for
Yeah.
people that we lead. So Carolyn, thank you so much. Appreciate
Likewise.
you and your testament to what it looks like to take on a founder journey, and the complications that you're going to come up against have not stopped, and they probably won't stop. And that's what we've signed up for. So thank you very much.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.